Today, we're doing a deep dive into two cases of domestic horror that are separated by 35 years but connected by this really chilling thread.
Mm.
We're talking about the 2020 tragedy in Woodmancoat with Robert Needham and Kelly Fitzgibbons, and then the notorious 1985 White House farm murders.
Committed by Jeremy Bamber, yeah. And these are both instances of familicide. I mean, they wiped out entire family units inside their own homes.
Right.
And what makes them so difficult to process, I think, is that gap between the perceived reality, the suburban normalcy, and the lethal chaos that was brewing right under the surface.
And for investigators, that gap is the motive. It's what they spend years trying to fill.
Exactly.
So that's our mission today. We've got a stack of sources here: true crime analysis, family histories, investigative documents, and we're going to try and use them to pull out the subtle, critical signs.
The quiet cracks, as you've called them.
The quiet cracks, yeah. The things that happen before these catastrophes, highlighting the patterns of control and manipulation that, make these events possible. It's almost a shortcut to understanding these hidden dynamics.
We're basically analyzing how a perfect facade is built and then what finally causes it to just completely shatter.
Okay, so let's unpack this, starting with the Woodmancoat case. This was March 2020, right at the start of the COVID lockdown.
Which makes it even more isolated. The devastation they found inside Kelly Fitzgibbons and Robert Needham's home in West Sussex was just agonizing.
It was absolute devastation. The victims were Kelly Fitzgibbons, who was 40, and her two very young daughters, 4-year-old Ava and 2-year-old Lexi. Kelly apparently called her Lulu Bell.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It is. And the family dog was also found dead. Robert Needham, the 42-year-old father, was the perpetrator.
And the details, I mean, they really stick with you. Ava and Lexi were shot at close range in bed, still in their pajamas. The sources suggest they probably never even woke up. And Kelly was found nearby. Investigators believe she was shot first on the landing, maybe trying to reach her children, before he shot her again fatally in the bedroom.
And Rob Needham was on the landing. He'd used the gun, which was legally owned, on himself.
And Kelly's life, from everything you read, was just focused on connection. She was organizing her 40th birthday bucket list.
That's right. Disneyland, the Orient Express.
Exactly. But she also had this very specific goal of earning a silver donor card by donating blood 25 times. It really emphasizes this profoundly caring nature she had.
Which just makes the whole thing harder to comprehend.
It does.
And then you have Rob Needham. He's the quiet, self-employed builder. Everyone thought he was reliable. He met Kelly when she was 26, and on the surface, he just adored her and the girls.
Which brings us to the first seismic crack in this facade. The gun license. Rob applied for his first firearm certificate when Ava was only a month old. And to get it, he lied, fundamentally.
He answered no to the questions about his mental health history and substance misuse.
Yeah. The shocking truth, which came out in the investigation, was a documented 20-year history of depression, severe anxiety, and multiple mental health episodes.
He also concealed a minor criminal record.
This is a critical systemic failure point. He got the license because he actively deceived the authorities, yes, but also because the vetting process didn't adequately flag his history.
So his doctor knew about his past issues.
His doctor did confirm a history of mental health issues to the firearms officer, but then stated that those past issues weren't enough to disqualify him. But what's key is that no one at any point pressed Rob on why he had lied on the paperwork in the first place.
That dishonesty itself should have been a massive red flag.
A huge one. So the structural problem wasn't just Rob, it was the process that enabled him. He showed a clear lack of integrity, but the system just said, okay, move along.
And meanwhile, behind that front door, Rob was quietly disintegrating. Kelly embraced being a mother, but Rob seemed completely overwhelmed by it. He was always escaping on these long fishing trips.
And that escape wasn't just for stress relief. It was masking a secret addiction.
Cocaine.
A chronic, long-term cocaine addiction. A doctor later testified about the, and I'm quoting here, corrosive effect it had on his system. And Kelly never knew.
She just trusted him completely.
He was open-hearted, yeah. She believed his explanations for his strange physical symptoms, never doubted him.
And that trust shielded his escalating inner turmoil until it was too late. but the quiet cracks were starting to show in ways she couldn't ignore anymore.
The text messages.
The investigation recovered text messages that just paint this picture of fear.
These texts are so important. They're the voice of the victim we otherwise just wouldn't hear. Kelly was pleading with him to control his temper, not to shout or slam doors.
She actually admitted she dreaded coming home sometimes.
And most damningly, she suggested they take a break only a month before the murders.
Which brings up a serious question about that facade. If Kelly's fear was so acute that she was planning a separation, how is it possible that the signs were so well hidden from everyone else?
That is the paradox of domestic abuse, especially when it's not physical. Kelly's own twin sister, Emma, who spoke to her every single day, described their life as happy and settled. She had no idea Rob was violent or controlling.
The effort that must have taken.
The facade was maintained with incredible effort and, I think, a lot of internalized shame.
This brings us to the broader context of domestic violence and familicide then, and especially how these mechanisms of silence and psychological abuse just prevent anyone from intervening.
We often hear the UK figure of around 23 such cases a year, so about 2 a month. But that number is really considered an underestimation by experts like the criminologist Jane Monckton Smith.
And why is that? Why would it be an underestimation?
The core reason is that these horrors are often masked by these simplified narratives, a mental breakdown or some sudden inexplicable stress. They aren't acknowledged as the final lethal act in a long pattern of domestic control.
So the statistics are misleading because the initial explanation focuses on the tragedy of mental illness, not the history of abuse.
Exactly. And when the abuse is non-physical mind games, gaslighting, emotional control, it leaves no visible bruises, but it profoundly damages the victim's ability to trust their own reality.
So for Kelly, who was so trusting,
She likely internalized the conflict. She probably believed she was being too sensitive or demanding, or that if she just handled things differently, Rob would be calm.
and that self-blame, that's what cements the silence, isn't it? She doesn't ask for help because she thinks the problem is her fault. She keeps up the happy family front.
It creates this perfectly protected bubble for the perpetrator's pathology to grow until it explodes. That silence is the abuser's most powerful tool.
That mechanism of hidden violence and escalating control, it brings us back 35 years. To the infamous White House farm murders in 1985, a case with a totally different pathology, but the same lethal desire for control.
The Bamber case. It involved Neville and June Bamber, who were deeply religious, and their 2 adopted children, Sheila and Jeremy.
And the crime scene was horrific. 5 family members murdered. Neville, June, Sheila, and Sheila's 6-year-old twin sons, Daniel and Nicholas.
Neville clearly fought back too. He had defense wounds, was shot multiple times.
The initial police theory was immediate and it seems very powerful. It focused entirely on Sheila.
Right. She had a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, and officers just quickly concluded she'd killed her family and then herself. Jeremy, the only survivor, he backed this up. He claimed his father had called him frantic, saying Sheila had gone wild with a gun.
So the reliance on her diagnosed mental illness as the sole explanation meant the crime scene was handled terribly.
Here's the disaster. Police burned bedding and carpet. They mishandled the weapon. The assumption of murder-suicide just clouded the entire initial investigation.
And that's similar to how modern cases can be too quickly explained away as just a mental breakdown.
It's the same principle. But suspicion pretty soon turned toward Jeremy. His behavior wasn't just grief. It was bizarre.
He was loud, hysterically sobbing for the cameras, but witnesses saw him grinning, even celebrating at the wake.
And making those comments about finally being the boss.
It just didn't fit. And the evidence that started to surface really didn't fit either. The most crucial piece came from a cousin who found a gun silencer.
Hidden in a cupboard in the family office.
Why was that silencer the smoking gun, literally?
Because of physics. When you attached it to the long rifle used in the murders, the weapon became far too long for Sheila, given her height and arm length, to have possibly maneuvered it to shoot herself in the way the police thought she did.
So the crime scene was physically inconsistent with the official story.
Precisely. And what's more, forensics found a spot of blood on the silencer that didn't belong to Jeremy. It belonged to one of the victims, confirming the silencer was used during the murders.
And Sheila, if she had killed herself, would never have detached it, cleaned it, and put it back in a cupboard.
Exactly. It's impossible. And the final piece of that puzzle was the testimony of Jeremy's ex-girlfriend, Julie.
Her conscience finally got to her.
It did. She revealed Jeremy's detailed planning, and it was motivated entirely by greed. He was unhappy. The inheritance was split 50-50 with Sheila, and he wanted all of it. So he specifically planned to eliminate the family and exploit Sheila's mental health, her schizophrenia, to frame her.
So the narratives of Nem and Bamber, though decades apart and with different motives, they are connected by this core mechanism. It's about control, and it's about using vulnerability as either a shield or a weapon.
Absolutely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Nem and Bamber represent two different types of lethal control. In the Nem case, you have concealed chaos.
Right.
His addiction, his own mental struggles, those were the hidden issues. And when that chaos exploded, it acted as the excuse or the backdrop for the tragedy. He was driven by his inability to manage his own life and secrets.
So his pathology, his self-deception, was the engine of destruction. It wasn't. It wasn't externally calculated against a specific family member like with Bamber.
Correct. Bamber's crime was pure calculation. He had no hidden addiction driving him. His issue was pure financial greed and a desire for absolute control. He didn't just passively let his issues be the explanation. He actively and strategically weaponized Sheila's existing vulnerability to frame her.
It was a cold, premeditated act designed to evade justice and get him the money.
The distinction is fascinating, isn't it? Nem's lie was on a form to get a gun. Bamber's lie was the entire elaborate framework of the crime itself.
In both cases, the perpetrators use a deep-seated vulnerability, either their own hidden shame or family members, to rationalize or cover up the violence.
And the lesson there for all of us is about how deeply these secrets can be hidden. Whether it's addiction, greed, abuse, or just simple dishonesty, it can all exist under this perfect veneer. You see the photos of the family on the climbing frame, the sunny holiday snaps, and you just assume safety.
The importance of looking closer cannot be overstated. We see that the surface, the family photos, the quiet suburban life, it's rarely the whole story. And that escalation of control is often the silent predictor.
And that's why this is so valuable. The lesson isn't just that these tragedies happen, but how the subtle, quiet signs of emotional abuse, like Kelly dreading coming home, are almost always the precursor to the final, devastating act.
That's a powerful summation. Both Kelly Fitzgibbons and Sheila Bamber were tragically silenced by their perpetrators, but their voices ultimately broke through the lies. In the Nem case, we only found out about Kelly's fear after she was gone, through her text messages pleading with him to change. They revealed the chaos he was hiding.
And in the Bamber case, it was the physical evidence. The silencers spoke against the calculated lie used to frame Sheila, exposing a calculated malice.
Which leaves you with this final thought to mull over. When the primary witness is gone, the perpetrator assumes the whole truth dies with them. But sometimes the most mundane pieces of evidence, a forgotten text, a misplaced piece of equipment, speak louder than any confession. What hidden truths might digital forensics or physical evidence be waiting to reveal in other cases where the voices of the victims have been silenced? Something to explore on your own.